lost access to my. All right, welcome in everybody. Sorry there, Neil. We had little technical issues there. I don't think nobody's joined us yet. We're lost one of our streams here. I think we're good on a couple of. Anyway, the main one is the Rebel Grove one and the Twitch football one. I guess there's a Facebook issue. Are there more technical issues there when you're dealing with as non-technical guys and myself? It is SEC football and beyond. I am Chris Landry. He is Neil McCready. Great to talk with you again. As we're rolling into May, as Memorial Day is right around the corner, yet so much going on. I know that we've got SEC baseball tournament starting out. We talked a little bit at the end of last week's show, Friday with Neil, kind of what he thought on that. Certainly, I'll be keeping my eye on that.
Starts in an hour.
Yeah, it's starting in the morning. So 10 a.m. Central. That's right. It is starting. So
actually,
it'll be
in 30 minutes. As a matter of fact, I think the first game's at 9:30.
Oh, 9:30 in the morning. Kind of like youth league ball now. When kids and their parents come into church with their baseball uniforms on. I see that it's early mass, and I'm like, oh man, they got a game starting at 9 o'clock.
This won't be an issue for all these guys. All these guys have grown up playing travel ball. They've played plenty of 9 a.m. games in their lives. So this will answering that bell and just rolling out and getting after it. That will not be a problem.
Well, we got a lot to. Well, I say there's a lot. There's a lot of news, believe it or not, on the recruiting side. We don't get into the minutia in that. I know if you want to know a lot of the details, we hit on a lot of the big topics. I know over at Landry Football in our notebooks every day, talk a little bit about transfer news when it's pertinent, and certainly a ton of recruiting stuff, visits. And June is, as I said, we're wrapping up the end of month of May. June's going to be a big month around college campuses with people visiting and whatnot. Also, is the time we're really certainly putting together and grading all these teams and going through the spring practice tape as I have, putting the previews of the teams up. It's a good time to be start talking about the best players returning in the league, how it plays out. Neil and I have gone through a few teams here or there, so we've got a lot of stuff to look for, because before you know it, June will go as fast as May has, and then we'll be July, and then it'll be getting ready, and the countdown will be on for when fall practices start. TJ Finley has selected, and it's been rumored. We talked about it, I guess, a couple of weeks ago when it first came out. I think we answered it in the chat room. He has selected Auburn. That's where he's going to go. Very talented guy. The situation at LSU didn't go well for him in the early stages, Neil, last year. Max Johnson played better, and TJ really struggled in the A&M game. Unfair to him. I mean, just a little bit slow in decision-making, as young guys are. Max Johnson a little bit more mobile. Miles Brennan is back. And then the real kind of the untold story was that the coaches at LSU are in love. And I've talked about it in my notebook a couple of days ago with Garrett Nussmeier's, the Doug Nussmeier's son. So, you're looking at best third, probably fourth, depending on the situation. And he was leaving, and he was kind of looking around. And so I'll kind of address that right away. He's going to Auburn, and somebody asked Neil, what does that do for Bo Nix? It does nothing for Bo Nix. This is a kid that's got to learn how to play. This is a guy that they're going to groom and get reps, and could be the guy next year. He's physically gifted. He's huge. Doesn't move he moves well for a big guy. I understand that 240 pounds is going to move a lot different than 210 pounds, as we know, Neil. So big guy, strong arm, cannon for an arm, and I'm curious to see what Brian and the staff's able to do with them. But that's kind of the latest news.
So Grind says, what's the % chance that TJ Finley's the starter at Auburn game 1? What's the % chance he's the starter by game 6 or 7?
He's not going to be the starter unless Bo Nix is injured or it completely collapses. And let me put it this: if this kid's starting, Auburn's in a whole lot of trouble. That means that Bo Nix has really been awful, and they've got no other chance, because TJ Finley's not ready to play now. Again, he's fourth at LSU.
Yeah,
He's not. He's just not ready. He needs time.
he popped up on the Ole Miss list a little bit. List is the wrong word, but it's the first word that came to my feet this morning. When he first announced he was getting in the transfer portal and leaving LSU, I've got a friend who is close to that family. And he said, hey, you need to be digging around on this a little bit. And I tried. I didn't really get anywhere because I don't think it ever really went anywhere. But Ole Miss was kind of on his list. And I think that, to me, acknowledged that he at least knew in the back of his own mind that, hey, I probably need a development year. I need to, because he wasn't going to come to Ole Miss, for example, and beat out a healthy Matt Corral for the starting job. But, yeah, Auburn's an interesting fit for him because of the, system that Harsin runs and that kind of thing. But, I know a lot of Auburn people get super down on Bo Nix, and I know that he has not lived up to some of the hype. But Nix has not been an awful quarterback for Auburn. You could do a lot worse, in my opinion, than what he's done the past couple of years.
Yeah, the problem's been development there. And I know the initial thought is he was a legacy signing and all that. He's got more talent than that, and he hasn't been properly developed. When you don't teach the passing game well, you don't teach protections well, you don't teach outlet routes, you've got some of the worst route running. It was a systematic problem. Not getting down on Gus. Gus was very good at teaching what he ran, but it had to have certain parts to it that to make that work in terms of being eclectic and doing multiple things and branching out of it. That wasn't Gus's thing. And so that was the problem there. Now, it doesn't mean that Bo's, at this stage, Bo's like, I hate to put it this way, he's like a freshman. He's got experience and all that, but he doesn't have an experience running what he's run. He probably had better understanding of pass drops, route concepts, coming out of high school, than he learned in college because of the system that they ran. It's a different system. That's all I'm saying. So I don't know that Bo's the answer, but I don't think TJ's ready. In fact, I would say this. I don't think Auburn's finished at the quarterback position. I think it's going to be tough for a recruit to come in and play. I don't know that TJ Finley's the starter. Maybe the better question be, what's the chances of TJ Finley being the starter game one next year? And I'd say no better than 50-50. I mean, I don't know why they signed him. Because he's in the mix. They don't have enough in the quarterback room, and we'll see. I don't know. I can't answer the question 50-50 because I do think recruiting, but I think another transfer, it depends upon the year, though. I think there are better quarterbacks out there that Auburn needs and probably will pursue to add to the room and just let it happen organically. It's not like, well, you choose this guy as a starter. No, you get guys in the mix and let it develop. I think this kid is really struggles from a seeing it and reacting to it and just mobility standpoint. But I will say this. I think that he's going to get more reps and more of a chance than he would have at LSU. As again, they like three guys better than him at this point. And he's a good kid, and we'll see where it develops. Not a lot of big, just a lot, just on the general recruiting sense. Georgia, and you can get the details out of it. Georgia A&M got big commitments over the weekend. I don't know, that's okay. Big, you want to learn about them and all that. We hadn't had a chance to talk about, LSU. I think probably the best secondary in the country. Probably just got better over the weekend with the transfer that comes in. Major Burns is a guy that can really help them. So it's a good group. And we didn't have a chance to discuss it, and would like to now. We talked a little bit about where, and I kind of had a feeling that Lane was going to be a little bit, off-putting finding certainly someone that was a little bit more established. I know he likes Jake Thornton. Gardner Webb, offensive line coach, is now the new line coach at Ole Miss. Curious to see how this plays out. Late start and all that, and no spring practice. He certainly he's a good young coach. That's the key there, and I think it's somebody that Lane has a background with, that on that offensive side, you know who the offensive leader is, and having the guy that was the head coach is really comfortable with, which is always the case, but really, really somebody that because that was the case obviously with the loss. Certain in terms of experience and quality, it's a step down for him, and the timing's not good either.
Well, look, this has been one of these stories that's frustrating to try to cover as a beat writer, because there's no access at all. We because of COVID and stuff, we don't know these people. Haven't had an opportunity to get to know them at all. There's no mutual trust that's built up beat to coach and that kind of thing. So when this happened in late April, right after the spring game, when Randy Clement was let go, you knew that something had happened. I heard a lot of different things. There's no way to completely vet everything that you hear, which as a reporter is frustrating.
Sure.
And then over the course of the last, what's it been? I guess not quite a month, almost a month. I knew they had talked to people, but there was no way to confirm it, who all they had talked to. And then sometimes, Chris, you don't know whether. So I get all these people that are like, was he the first choice? Was he the sixth choice? Was he the ninth choice? Like, I don't know, because like, for example, and I won't. There was a veteran coach that I know that Lane Kiffin talked to. All right, but I don't know if that conversation was, hey, do you want the job? Can I get you to come here? Or if it was, hey, let me run some names by you and get some thought, or if it was a little bit of something in between. So is that an interview? I don't know. Is that a job offer? I don't know. And so it's a difficult thing to answer. I do know that they brought several people to Oxford. I don't know the exact number, and I don't know names to where I feel comfortable with them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I know some names, but before I said, hey, so-and-so traveled to Oxford and interviewed for the Ole Miss offensive line coach job, I'd really want to talk to that person or someone close to that person and make sure that everybody knew about it. I would hate to cost somebody his job. I would hate to hurt somebody's employment if it turns out that, hey, they came to Oxford, kind of did it on their own. It's kind of quiet. This happens in coaching, as you know, Chris. Kind of did it sort of quiet. It was more of a feeling out process where maybe it could have led to a job offer, but it didn't. It wasn't necessarily anything more than, hey, let's just talk ball for a couple hours and see what happens. Anyway, I do know that when Thornton came in, and I believe it was Friday of last week, they were blown away with him. They really liked him. Jeff Lebby was in on at least part of the interview, really liked him. And within minutes of the conclusion of the interview, Lane Kiffin felt like he had his guy. Obviously, he's 28 years old. He's at Gardner Webb. He's not going to turn down the Ole Miss offensive line coaching job. That's too good of a step up. What's interesting to me about Ole Miss right now is that Lane Kiffin has had three, maybe four coaching turnover, which is normal. That happens all over the country. He's gone really young on his staff. And I don't know whether that is by design or whether that has been by coincidence. I don't know whether that is because he felt like he needed more dynamic young recruiters on his staff and he was willing to trade some experience on the field for that, or whether that even was considered. It's one of those things I haven't had a chance to talk to Kiffin at all about. But when we have a media opportunity, it's kind of what I'm interested in.
I think knowing Lane as I do, young, because that's his background. He came in as a young guy, and so he believes in that. I've been around where you can always tell people that are more open to young guys. What do you get with you? You lack experience, you get maybe more energy, you get a little bit more willingness to do things the way like Belichick was always and is always starting. He likes guys that are young. he doesn't want guys to come in with their ideas. Saban's kind of the same way. They want guys to come in. This is the system that we're going to run, and we want you to operate this. This is what we're going to call it. This is how it is. And young people, Bill likes to train his guys. So now he starts them out young. So I mean, Josh McDaniels is an unpaid intern. You know, I mean, and they work their way through, and then they don't like come in. You have to learn. You have to work the pads, as Bill called it. That means you got to do the plotting, the breakdown. So you have to go through like a learning system. And I think Lane, and people will criticize Lane, in coaching, oh yeah, born on third base, thought he hit a triple, because of his dad. But Lane was very bright and kind of got opportunities and kind of sold himself well and got early opportunities. Now we've talked about it before as a little bit as maturity issues. I think that Lane's biggest issues is just over the time, like at USC, organization, staff. There were crap going on at USC he didn't even know about because he's worried about, what the third down package is going to be. And you got to be different as a head coach. I think he's more conducive to young guys and doesn't want guys on the offensive side of the ball that particularly, but maybe is just that's going to come and say, Lane, I don't think he wants that. I think he likes suggestions, but I think he wants certain people. And in this situation, there's no doubt that I'm sure he had several conversations. There's some people that are out of work that are good line coaches. Is it a fit? Maybe not a fit for them. Maybe not a fit for Lane. But there's no question that the timing narrowed this because
for sure
this ain't a place where you're going to sit there and leave a pretty good job to go to Ole Miss now after spring. It's not. Your pool is less, and it has to be from a Gordon or Webb type of guy. So the hire is somebody that he knows, he's comfortable with, but it's not. I would say that if this decision was made, if the issues that led to the dismissal, if that had happened in January, I think it'd be a different line. I think it's fair to say it'd be different line coach, hired today. I don't know that. You can't prove that. But my experience tells me that it would be. It does not mean it's not good. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. And the other thing is, again, this is Lane's baby on offense, and Jeff Levy's certainly guy that's running it and all that. Jeff wasn't real happy about the move that was made to remove the coach. But be that as it may, Randy's gone. I wonder, too, sometimes on the defensive side, he's a little bit more inclined to maybe kind of leave that to somebody else. But I think young guys are what he's about. And I've been around where, people want the old grizzle vet that's been around and don't work as hard. Maybe don't do this or that. But that's just kind of the way it is. And that's so I'm curious to see. People might say, Neil, how is this going to affect the offense? The offense, I don't feel they're not going to change the blocking scheme.
Right.
You're going to have, a young guy coming in, and what impress them is that he understands what the blocking scheme. He can run that. It can teach that.
Yep.
And so that's why Jeff's on it. So it's going to be that. Now, it's a disadvantage for Jake not having a spring. It would have been better for him if he could have gone through a few practices.
Right.
But, there are ways to work around that. It's not like, look out. Ole Miss will average, 18 points a game now. No, it's not going to affect this offense.
Well, but every spring snap was recorded. I mean, he will be able to go back and literally watch. He won't be able to recreate it with his interactions, but he will be able to go back and watch every single thing from the moment that they began stretching until they walked off the field at the end of every one of their 15 practices. He'll get to look at film. He will take, there will be an advantage there. There will be a learning curve, but look, he's a young guy. He's a smart guy. He's been at new jobs before. I don't think the learning curve will be the steepest thing. It's interesting that you say that because I think so much of what ultimately happened with Clement and Kiffin was Clement is a veteran coach. Established in his ways, established in his thoughts, there were things where he believed that what Kiffin wanted to do was not what's the word I'm looking for was not the optimal way to use certain personnel, not the optimal way to develop certain personnel. Obviously, the buck stops with Kiffin. He's the head coach. He's the guy that he's the guy that the W or the L gets hung on his resume at the end of the day. And so they disagreed. The mistake, and I suspect Kiffin, based on what I've heard, I think he would likely admit this. The mistake that he made was after the LSU game, when the regular season ended, prior to the bowl game. If you go back and remember, he let Deke Adams go prior to the bowl game. I think he wanted to let Randy Clement go at the same time. I don't think it.
And Jeff may have kind of talked him out of it, or he may have.
Well, a couple things happened. One, it's no secret here that Brian Harsin at Auburn, and I don't remember the exact dates on when Harsin got the Auburn job, but Harsin was very interested in hiring Levy and Clement as a team. Ultimately, he got Bobo and I can't think of his name, from South Carolina as a team.
Yes.
To come to Auburn. So he was very interested in bringing a coaching group, if you will, to Auburn. And I can't say this with 100% certainty, but I can say it with a certain degree that's close to that Levy was his top choice. And I think there for a little while, Jeff Levy leaned pretty heavily towards going to Auburn. Ole Miss had a bowl game, and I think Levy at one point intended to leave the bowl game and go to Auburn. And then that changed. And I think in that process, that's where the decision to, hey, let's give this some more time. Let's give it another year. Came to fruition with Clement, and ultimately he stayed on, and you know the rest. So I suspect that, like with anything, things are complicated, but I suspect if you could go back and say, hey, you get a do-over on this, he would
do it earlier.
He would have done it earlier, yeah, and he would have done it in December, and Levy would have gotten over it in all likelihood, and they would, like you said, they would have been able to conduct a completely different kind of search. But to your point, you're exactly right. And the truth is, we won't. Is it a good hire? We won't know. There's no way. How can you say it's a good hire or it's not a good hire at this point? We'll certainly find out over the course of time, but it would have been a completely different search had he been able to conduct that search in early January as opposed to early May.
Yeah, there's a reason why assistant coaching hires, head coaching hires, and assistant coaching hires it go at a certain time. I mean, nobody says, you know what, I'm going to wait after spring and then I'm going to decide. And it usually is something unusual happens. I mean, Bob Stoops waited to retire late because he wanted to get Lincoln Riley the job, and I think he wanted to. And I think the administration, he had the administration on his side with there, but so there wasn't any backlash of, well, you need to open up to. No. It's kind of late. It was May, it was June, and boom, You don't ever want to do that. Probably that's another one that Lane would say on experience. Yeah, you know what? Should have gone with my first gut. And again, nothing. But if the head coach is the head coach, and look, it does come down to that. And if you feel like it's the right move, you got to make tough decisions. And that's the one area that I think that Lane has grown and has got to grow even more is. Hey, being a head coach and making those decisions, the timing of everything, doing things right. Look, it's you don't have to agree with it. I can tell you, just to fortify that, I don't know how many people are aware of this, so I'll mention this. People think, you think about coaches, and a lot of great coaches been fired. People say that Nick Saban never been fired. He actually has been fired once.
He got fired at where was it? It was a Big Ten school, right?
I'll tell you, it's at Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State.
So he's working for Earl Bruce. He's coaching the secondary. He's a young guy, and they're having a bad year by their standards. And they go and they play. Who do they play in the ball game? Might have been one of the academy. Maybe it was Navy or something, and they just rolled them. Well, anyway. The whole thing, because Nick told me a story. He, how Earl Bruce wanted that secondary coach. Nick had ideas of different. He was a young guy. Again, he was Nick Saban, but he wasn't Nick Saban. He was a young guy, had his ideas, agreed vehemently on how it should be done. And it was, he learned then after that, he told me that the head coach is the head coach. You bring your points to the meeting. Coach, this is why, this is what's happening, this is what, in the end, the head coach says it and you have to move on. He didn't, and he, along with the entire defensive staff, got fired after that bowl game. But he got fired. And I know that it's an example of it can happen. And not all the guy gets fired because the guy's not a good coach. The guy didn't do a good job. Very often, it's just what we're talking about. It's a guy that's a strong belief that, hey, we're doing it wrong. And particularly, I would say this, if you had a defensive version of Clement with an idea, then there'd be a lot more. Lane would not be hands off, but he's not as tied to, certain things on that side. He might let that go and let the defense coordinator kind of make sure that that's working right. A defensive line coach said off it, but the offense, you're not going to convince him that the blocking scheme, because I know what it is and what the offensive line coach wants to do, and there are things that offensive line coaches are not going to like by the way that Lane runs it. Well, you know what? Don't go coach for him, because he gonna run that the way he wants to. He's the head coach, but he's also the guy that believes in his system more than anybody, and he's gonna run that system. He's gonna let Jeff run it, and that's just, you're not bending that. You're not gonna bend that.
I think the strength that Saban has developed over the decades is something you just referenced. I've heard this from a number of people who have worked with Nick Saban. They'll have a meeting, and Saban's a very good listener. He takes things in. He listens. He's not one of these guys who's not willing to listen to a different idea. He encourages coaches to bring their ideas to the table. He listens. But at the end of the meeting, he says, okay, this is what we're going to do. And that's that. Everybody walks out of that room knowing this is the plan for Saturday. This is the plan for X game. This is the plan for this approach. Whatever the case may be, there's no ambiguity at the end of the meeting as to whose program it is, what the plan is. But guys feel like when they leave that room that they were heard. And for a lot of people, that's important. Hey, I have a thought here. This is something I feel passionately about. I at least want you to hear it. And I think that happens in those meeting rooms. And look, I suspect Nick Saban would tell you that in his very early days at Michigan State, he wasn't as good at that as he is today at Alabama.
No doubt. No doubt.
That is a learning curve.
No doubt. And the coaches respect, and it's easy to say the coaches respect Nick Saban because he's won all those titles. They respect him because the guy puts in the work. He is an X's and O guy. He understands offense from a defensive perspective, and so he really challenges those offensive coaches. And then defensively, how they call things. Bill O'Brien, I don't care who you are. You're coming in there, you're Mr. New Coach. You're going to learn how they call it. You have to adjust to them. Whereas in some cases, the new coach will come in and they'll change the terminology, how they call it. Well, they got to make everybody else in the building learn their way. No. You go there, you learn their Alabama's way how to do it. And the coaches respect the football acumen of Bill. Neil and everybody out there listening, not every head coach is the same type. So, if you're certain coaches that are a good head coach that have had success and won titles, but you're not a great X's and O guy, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator do not respect you. They may show you respect as a head coach, but they don't respect your knowledge of line play, of, whatever, secondary play. And therefore, it's like, I know more than you. And you're telling me, and so that type of head coach has to be careful to gather the information, listen to the right people, and say, look, this is what we're going to do, and explain it why. Whereas with Nick, he kind of cuts through the clutter because he's kind of the top football guy there. Whereas I'll just say it, and I'm not trying to be rude. Dabo Swinney is the head coach. He's the top guy there. He's not the top football guy there. He's not even never called plays. He's so in terms of how Brent Peace is going to do what Brent Venables is going to do what he's going to do, and on offense, Dabo, he knows what they're doing, but he's not somebody that would just pick up and step on people's toes, because I think he knows that there's a limit there. So hey, we got a bunch of questions as we're talking about. Let's get to some of the conversations.
So let's get to this question. Well, people like it when we do these kind of take a quick look at a schedule. We've been talking about Ole Miss. Let's start with them. We'll go to LSU after that. They'll get questions about both of them. So I found it's on my message board, rebelgrove.com. Where the over-under on wins for Ole Miss this season, one betting house, I guess, whatever the word is, had it at 6. I was like, whoa, that's way too low. The next one came out at South Point, Las Vegas, put it at 7.5, which I think is about right for Ole Miss. And they have a handful of Ole Miss games where these are the betting lines, Chris, today. If you were to go to South Point, Las Vegas, and go into the casino, Ole Miss is an 8-point favorite today over Louisville, a 22-point dog to Alabama. Ole Miss LSU is a pick. Just Vegas.
Wow.
Vegas views it as a coin toss.
Wow.
Ole Miss is a 6-point favorite at Auburn, which feels like a huge line to me. Ole Miss is an 11-point favorite over Liberty. And if you want to bet the Egg Bowl today on May the 25th, you can in Las Vegas. You'll have to, if you take Ole Miss, you have to lay 7 points. So let's go through the Ole Miss schedule. I want to get your thoughts on it. If you don't have it in front of you, probably I'll read.
No, I don't. So and what I like to do is I like to listen, and I will put them in like this is really scientific. I put them in the one-loss column or kind of in the middle and for discussion.
Given what else happened with COVID, I think what you just described is every bit as scientific as a lot of the stuff that is getting passed these days.
Got my pencil and paper there.
All right, Ole Miss opens on Labor Day night in Atlanta against Louisville. That's September the 6th. That's a national televised game. Big first weekend of TV games, Alabama and Miami and Georgia and Clemson and Ole Miss and Louisville is the final game of that weekend, Labor Day night. 5 days later, Ole Miss, its home opener against Austin Peay. Then on September the 18th, Ole Miss at home against Tulane. Ole Miss gets a weekend off after Tulane. And then on October the 2nd, they get rewarded with the trip to Nick Saban and Alabama there in Tuscaloosa. On October the 9th, Ole Miss is home against Arkansas. On October the 16th, they wrap up the first half of the schedule at Tennessee. That's October the 16th at Tennessee. October the 23rd, I just noticed this. Ole Miss is home away for a little while. October the 23rd, Ole Miss is at home against LSU in a game that Vegas believes is a pick'em. On October the 30th, Ole Miss is at Auburn. And then they go into the month of November the 6th. This will be an obnoxious hype week game. Some of the national media some of the lies that they will tell this particular week will be stunning. I can't decide if I can't wait or if I dread it. Ole Miss plays Liberty on November the 6th in Oxford. Then they play Vanderbilt on not Vanderbilt, Texas A&M on November the 13th in Oxford.
That's a little bit of a difference, Neil. Vanderbilt, A&M.
They do get Vanderbilt a week later in Oxford. The 3 home games in a row in November. Liberty, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, 3 home games in a row in Oxford. And then on Thanksgiving night, Ole Miss and Mississippi State get together in the Egg Bowl. The game is in Starkville this year.
Well, a couple of things jump out at me. I like the schedule. I think the schedule is favorable. I think that there's a real opportunity to.
Oh, and by the way, Chris, I'm wrong. Auburn's a 6-point favorite over Ole Miss, not the other way around. I apologize.
Okay. It didn't make on a difference on how I was looking at it. However, I will say this: like the schedule, Louisville's still rebuilding, challenging. Austin P. Now Tulane, expect them to win this game, folks, and we'll get into this a little bit more. I don't want to detour too much. Two really good defensive linemen at Tulane, NFL players. So watch out for Tulane a little bit this year.
Willie's done up there. Willie's done just a terrific job.
Really is.
Yeah.
I think Ole Miss is more talented than Arkansas. So, folks, it's all I can do is kind of go over the teams that are a little bit more talented. I can't judge into, because people will look at, I can't tell you healthy and momentum and things.
Sure.
Definitely better than Tennessee. So, I think there are 5 wins there. Liberty's going to be a challenge because it could be a shootout, and you got to get some stops. You should. And then you hide your head if you can't beat Vanderbilt. That's 7 wins there. I do think Auburn is intriguing. I think that's a swing game to me. I think that could go either way. But I want to, in fairness, I want to see Auburn. I think Auburn's talent, there is a prevailing thought Auburn's always better than Ole Miss. Well, talent-wise, they usually are. Right now, the talent gap is not as much as you might think. So that's a challenge. I think Alabama and A&M are, something bad has to happen to them. I also think LSU is quite a bit better than Ole Miss. Now, everyone will throw where it could be chaos. It could. Well, I don't know how to predict. If LSU plays, if Ole Miss plays their A+ game and LSU plays their B- game, LSU wins. There's that much talent difference in my mind. But if LSU's discombobulated, they're turning the ball over, they're disorganized, yeah, I can absolutely see that. But it has to be that. And, I don't know, to predict that is kind of difficult. Sometimes you can see it coming, and I could see a scenario. Look, I'm fully aware. I live in Baton Rouge. I'm fully aware of the potential issues if you're off to a bad start and how things could fall apart. So, I'm not writing that off. I'm just telling you from a talent standpoint that LSU is still overall more talented than A&M. Now, A&M, I think, is better organized. But LSU is the second most talented team in the West.
They've recruited at a really high level for years. It makes sense. They have NFL prospects all over their roster. Now, like you said, and it is almost impossible on May the 25th to say, okay, on October the 23rd, which is, what is that, basically 5 months from today, on October the 23rd, LSU is going to be team chaos or not. Certainly, there are a lot of the elements in place for them to be a chaotic program by October the 23rd. But that doesn't mean that they will be. It just, who knows, right? So I'm with you. So when I look at Ole Miss's schedule, I look at 2 games off the top, and I go, I don't think Ole Miss can beat Texas A&M right now. I don't think they match up with them at the line of scrimmage. And I don't think Ole Miss can beat Alabama and Tuscaloosa. Doesn't mean that they won't or that crazier things don't happen. But if you're predicting those games by chalk, those are easy to call. I think Ole Miss beats Louisville. I think they beat Austin P. I think Tulane is a fun game to watch, but I think Ole Miss is better than Tulane. I think Ole Miss will beat Arkansas at home. That game has kind of become this whoever's the home team sort of wins it kind of a thing. I think Ole Miss beats Tennessee. I think LSU's a swing game. I think Auburn is a swing game. I think Ole Miss beats Liberty. I think Ole Miss beats Vanderbilt. And I'm not as willing to just go Mississippi State. That's a W because you see the way that rivalry game plays out.
Oh wait, you know what? You didn't mention Mississippi State, and I forgot to mention it. I didn't talk about Mississippi State because I don't think you mentioned, or I didn't hear you mention it. Yeah, that's obviously it's the end. It's the last game. I would put that as a swing game, believe it or not. I think that I still would favor Ole Miss, though. I think Mississippi State a little bit better. But yeah, no, I would. So that's an 8-win to me. I think I would probably give them a look. Here's the thing: most talented team in putting the coaching and how good the team's going to be. LSU, as I said, talent-wise, very good on the lines of scrimmage. Best secondary in the country. New coaches, lot of off the field issues. So yeah, it could be a situation. I will say this, that if it's but just in terms of talent, that's all I can go by. That's a huge difference. People will say, well, last year what? And Georgia Roberts said, well, last year was a disaster for LSU. It was a completely disorganized, dysfunctional team. If you get that again, well, then yeah, all bets are off. We'll go through the LSU schedule too. We can take that into a collapse where they lose 4 games, but it has to be that, because from a talent standpoint, there's only in the West, only Alabama is better. A&M is better coached, and I think maybe a better team, but LSU's more talented than A&M. So, and that's all I'm talking about, just pure talent. Coaching matters.
Yeah, here's the part that's almost impossible to predict, right? Is that I could put on a pair of, this isn't even red and blue glasses. I could do this pretty objectively. Ole Miss beats Louisville, beats Austin Peay, beats Tulane, 3-0. They get a weekend off. They go to Alabama. It's on national TV, and they play them within 10 points. Lose to Alabama, come back, beat Arkansas at home, big crowd, go to Tennessee and win the Kiffin game and all that stuff. There's at that point, 5-1 when LSU to town. LSU comes to town in late October, and the Grove is absolutely packed, and the town is crazy from Wednesday on, and there's this momentum, and you can feel it and all that stuff. And sometimes all of that stuff in a home field is worth 4, 5, 6 points, and maybe that gets you over the hump against an LSU. And then you go to Auburn and all that stuff. It's the part that, like you're talking about, you're doing this the right way, which is just pure talent. The part that the reason that sports are fun, especially college sports, is that there's no way on May the 25th for you to accurately, without just really guessing, for you to say, and here's what it's going to feel like in late October. Because who knows, right? Who knows what injuries are and that kind of thing. I mean, the scenario I just painted is pretty realistic, and that's a 5-1 Ole Miss team. Hell, game days in town, the whole shooting match, right, on October the 23rd, and it's crazy. And you've seen that environment before, and that can be a game changer. And then maybe after that you go to Auburn and you're a favorite, but you have a letdown because you've expended so much emotional energy the week before, and you lose to Auburn, or you beat Auburn, and then you come home and they try to get you all geeked up for the Hugh Freeze Bowl, and the kids can't get into it. I mean, there's no way to. That's the beauty of sports. So that's why it's fun. I look at them, and I think they're an 8-4, 9-3 team. I think it's going to be a really good Ole Miss team. I don't think the roster's quite ready to make that leap into the elite. I just don't think they're there yet. I think most people close to the program would tell you that. But I do think the schedule's pretty favorable. I think they're going to be very good at quarterback. I think they're going to be pretty good up front on the offensive line if they can stay healthy. And I think they're going to be much improved on defense. But are they improved enough? I don't know. They'll be better, but you have to be better, because last year defensively, Ole Miss was awful most of the time.
Yeah, and God, we really appreciate all of you that are joining us in the chat room. Georgia Reb and Grind and Nola Jack and Sean Jones. Sean question a little bit ago about, do you think DJ Durkin will improve the Ole Miss defense if they added depth? We just hit it. It's personnel. DJ's a really good coach, big believer in him, but it's about how much better will this defense be. And so, like, when you're talking about, okay, can you pull the upset of LSU or pull the upset of, not going to do that against Alabama, and I don't think A&M. And you say, well, wait a minute, if A&M is not quite as talented as LSU, well, A&M's a little bit better, is better coached, and LSU's got some issues. Can you come up with stops? Because I think this Ole Miss offense will score and will find a way, even when there's mismatches against them, to create tempo advantages. But can you get some stops? And so that's going to be the key. So it's a part of what we'll see how good DJ will do. I think he'll do a very good job. I just don't know how far this defense will be better. How much better? Again, everyone looks at, well, you're better or not based on the record. That's not really the case. It's, are you better or not? And sometimes it translates into a better record. But, there's, when you look at a team, you also have to look at the relative improvements of who you play. It's a lot easier to play this game in college than the NFL. It's impossible in the NFL, rather. But, I do think that there's going to be some intriguing matchups. Mississippi State's could be for that 8th win or 9th win, depending on how things go. But it's going to be, but no, it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right,
Surprised to hear how high Chris is on Mississippi State. Now, I'm not high on Mississippi State. I just think they're better. Like, for example, when we're talking last year at this time, one of the things that really concerned me about LSU is that I thought Bo Pelini and Orgeron was an all-in-water matchup. Well, I didn't expect Mississippi State to score 1,200 yards in a game, week one. LSU's defense collapsed. It was discombobulated, and I don't think that's going to happen this year because it was everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Younger coaching will be better. I don't know how good. I think Mississippi State's going to look better. The offense is going to be better. I do think they'll lose some key points on defense. I'm not a big believer in Mississippi State with Mike. I just think that their offense is going to come into more consistency this year than in the past. And you can't Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I mean, that is neither one of those teams rarely has been just decidedly better than the other. I mean, they're close enough to where that game and the importance of the game and the hatred and the competitiveness usually kind of makes that competitive, even when one team is, you think, 10 points better. It's usually closer.
We'll talk about LSU schedule in just a minute. First, I want to tell you we're brought to you by Blue Sky. Blue Sky believes in being fast, fresh, and friendly through the thoughtful layout and cleanliness of their stores. Blue Sky hopes to provide customers with fast and easy buying experience. From services to products, Blue Sky plans to keep things fresh and always provide the freshest flavors of their brand name products and the best services available. They even bring in some of the newest products on the market to their stores to provide an even better customer experience. A smile can say it all, and at Blue Sky, they want to show their customers that they care about them and their shopping experience. They'll always strive to improve their efforts to accomplish exactly that. So check out Blue Sky today at any one of their 48 store locations across the Southeast. And we're brought to you by Alpha Specialties, located at 1670 Highway 80 in Pearl, Mississippi. Alpha is your trailer-specific professional. If you want to haul it, they can call it. Alpha is the premium trailer dealership in Mississippi. They've got Load Trail. It's the premium brand trailer, the highest quality utility equipment dump and gooseneck trailers being built today. Fully primed and powder coated, Load Trail trailers come with an industry-leading 3-year warranty and 2 years of roadside assistance. Alpha Specialties also has Hallmark cargo trailers, one of the most quality cargo trailers on the market today, perfect for hauling goods to markets and shows, ATVs to deer camp, hauling race cars, and more. Alpha can even work with third parties to have game day trailers and concession trailers built just for you. For podcast listeners, Alpha has spare tires and wheels starting at just $100, a full selection of trailer parts and accessories, hitches, winches, straps, and more. Alpha also does all types of truck accessories. And listeners can get 10% off a yearly trailer service and inspection at Alpha's full-service shop, where they can repair all types of trailers, concession, horse, utility, enclosed, gooseneck, and RV. So give them a call, 601-932-9798, or check them out at alphaofms.com. All right, Chris,
Hey, real quick, answer a question real quick, because I think who was asking about first-year coaches, and we went over Auburn's schedule, but somebody was asking about South Carolina. We already went over South Carolina, but real quick, in case you weren't with us, I mean, you look at the schedule. East Carolina, Eastern Illinois, Eastern Carolina, Troy, Vanderbilt. And that's the only sure wins. I mean, Tennessee's a, toss-up. Georgia, Kentucky, A&M, Florida. I think Missouri. And I think even Auburn. You can throw that in a swing game. I think Auburn will be better, personally. I think Auburn will be a lot better than South Carolina. Clemson, I mean, I don't think you've beaten anybody with the possible exception of Tennessee. I mean, I think that is a program that's got, and I love Kevin Harris, the running back. I think that's a program that's got a lot of rebuilding to do. That's some thought. Also, before we get it, I know you have some thoughts on this. Jeff Parrott asked, so what does Coach O have to do this year to stay off the hot seat? Could y'all go through that schedule? We're going to go through that in a second. So let's go to that, and then
Okay.
we'll do LSU, and then we'll talk about Coach O's situation here.
All right, LSU opens on September the 4th at UCLA. That game in the Rose Bowl. On September the 11th, LSU gets home opener against McNeese. September the 18th, also in Baton Rouge, LSU hosts Central Michigan. LSU's SEC opener is in Starkville on September the 25th at Mississippi State. The SEC home opener a week later, October the 2nd, LSU entertains Auburn there at Tiger Stadium. October the 9th, LSU is at Kentucky. October the 16th, LSU and Florida renew their rivalry this year in Tiger Stadium. It's been a wild series. October the 23rd, the aforementioned Ole Miss LSU game in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium in Oxford. LSU gets the week off October 30th before going to Alabama on November the 6th. On November the 13th, LSU entertains Arkansas. A week later, Terry Bowden and ULM, good God, make the trip to Baton Rouge for that game, November the 20th. And then LSU wraps up the regular season on November the 27th at home against Jimbo Fisher and the Texas A&M Aggies.
Well, to me, it's pretty clean schedule. I mean, I think it's I think Alabama's more talented and better coached. I think A&M's better coached. Remind me here. It's in Baton Rouge, right? A&M?
Yes, A&M's in Baton
Rouge. That's what I thought.
Yep.
But I right now, I certainly like the coaching, and I think A&M's just getting better and better, and I think the talent level's close, LSU and A&M. I think the swing game's at Kentucky. We'll see what type of shape Kentucky's in. LSU probably wins that.
Yeah.
Florida is in.
It's in LSU.
It's in, yeah. So I do think, I would maybe give LSU a slight edge in those two, but they call them swings. I don't see the Ole Miss game as a swing game. I see that as if LSU's collapsing. Yeah, I think a lot of things. Well, I don't think a lot of things can happen. I think Ole Miss and Auburn, or it could happen. I think coaching and just dysfunction is the whole issue at LSU. I think in talent level, and that, folks, look, LSU's a lot more talented than Mississippi State, and they got blown out week one. So again, that's the whole point of how's this going to be. This to me is a talent level. It's a 10-2 team. I mean, they're more talented than everybody other than Alabama, A&M, and I do think Florida is capable, and coaching there could take that to 9-3. But it's the thing that we've talked about, and we'll get into what does Ed need to do and the situation. And look, but let's address the kind of the off the field and the other shoe to drop, this or that. I mean, it's no different than any other place. If they're having success on the field, it'll be excused. Oh, he wasn't aware of it. Other people will be thrown under the bus, and everything's sunky-gory. Just like, Les Miles they were aware of all the things that he was doing, and when it was going well, they were fine. There was one guy, the athletic director, didn't like Les Miles, never did, and was wanting to run him out, Joe Oliva. But he was overruled because they were having enough success at LSU at that time. If Ed's struggling, if there's some dysfunction, if they lose to an Ole Miss, if there's a 4-loss season, there's going to be a lot of movement to take that, whatever he knew or didn't know. Yeah, he's a dirty guy. So that whole thing is going to be, as it always is, particularly going to be lied down to the whole issue of what is the performance on the field. Look, it's LSU is one of those teams where Talent-wise, they're really good. LSU's not. They're different. They're not Alabama. They won the title 2 years ago and had an unbelievable run. But they're not consistent. They're not Georgia. They're not even A&M is on the move, and you see the steady, so good foundation. LSU's it's not the foundation. There's they step on the wrong step and fall through the floorboards, or you don't know what's there. Talent level, though, they're very good. They're more talented than Ole Miss. They're more talented than Auburn. They're more talented than Arkansas. Even more talented than Florida. Not by as much. More talented than Kentucky. So I think that I would say that maybe 9-3, and maybe the Florida. It wouldn't surprise me if they stabilize things and with the young coaches, both sides of the ball. Talent level wise, this is a 10-2 team. But I'm curious to see where they go because 10-2, I have the feeling that maybe they won't reach that because maybe they'll trip up. I don't see them pulling an upset because that would be you got to upset Alabama. Maybe you can beat A&M if A&M's having some issues, quarterback or what have you. But I could see them more likely being upset than upsetting one of the two teams that are just as good or better than they are.
So I look at them and I see, like you, on paper, they're 6-0 when Florida comes to town October the 16th. That's what they should be. And if they are, there is no chaos. Because like you said, if you're winning big and you're 6-0 and you're 4th or 5th in the country or whatever in the polls, nobody's firing anybody. I mean, not unless there's some photographic proof. But there are a couple of games in that mix that I look at and go, like at UCLA, a lot of pressure on Chip Kelly at UCLA to get it done. You got to go win that game. At Mississippi State, you saw what happened a year ago. I know that doesn't mean anything, but, State's going to be geeked up for LSU when they come to town. And
that'll be one you probably can bet that Mississippi State's probably in trouble in that game because of what happened last year. Unless again, the wheels have completely come off.
Right.
I agree. I think that's
you know what I mean. So if I tell you, if the football gods come down and tell me, hey man, when Florida goes to Baton Rouge, LSU's 4-2. I'm like, oh God, something's bad there. The wheels are coming off. There is chaos. They're unable to get on the same page. Ed's in trouble. That's what I mean.
Yes.
I think they're 6-0. To me, I look at it. I do see Florida as a swing game. I do see Ole Miss as a swing game. I don't think LSU wins in Tuscaloosa. LSU beats Arkansas. It beats ULM. And if you made me pick today, and again, this is November the 27th, for God's sake, this is half a year away. I'd probably pick A&M to beat LSU just because if you made me bet today on May the 25th, I would bet that Jimbo's team and program is a little steadier on November the 27th than Ed's and LSU's.
Yeah, I got Florida as that. I got a win line, a loss line, and I got an in between that's a swing. And I think Florida is the swing, and I think Alabama A&M are the losses in terms of a roster. But I'm with you. I do think Ed needs to beat Ole Miss, and what I mean by that is I think that's where it becomes an issue because I think 4 losses becomes that area where they're going to sit there and say this is not that. Here's the reality of it. People look at he's still living off of what's real, and this is again the true dynamic of Ed's program. Is LSU 2 years ago the real thing or last year? The answer is both.
Yeah.
You're on both.
Yeah.
It's why there's going to be inconsistency with Ed. Ed falls into that category of a guy that's not a great X's and O guy. In fact, he's very, very poor. He's a good recruiter. He's a good salesman. So he lives and dies with who he hires. Well, he didn't get his top 2, 3, 4 defense coordinators. Doesn't mean, again, that it will work, don't work. He's got a guy from the Joe Brady lineage that he brought back on the offense. I think things will be better organized on both sides, even though they're younger. I just don't think they're going to be dynamic and everything's going to fall in place like 2 years ago. I don't know. If you ask me, does it have a chance to be like 2008 and 2 years ago? No. That was the one-off. It's more likely to go the other way and be more of a collapse. But I don't think it's going to be either one. I think it's going to be somewhere in between, and I think they're going to be probably trying to do wringing hands on what to do and where to go and how to deal with this, because that's what you're going to get with that. You're not going to get consistency. Look, I think, for example, and I've mentioned this to you before, the people that will criticize Georgia and Kirby Smart, that program is rock solid. They're every year. All you want to do is be in contention every year. You don't want to be roller coaster. You don't want to be like Ed. You don't want to be like Gus with Auburn, in my mind. And that's in my mind. Maybe the fans' mind, it's different. Yeah, I'm not saying that you're not thrilled to win the national title 2 years ago if you're an LSU fan. But in the football world, it's about consistency. All you want is to be in a position to win. You can't win a championship unless you're in a position to win. And I think if you're there and you're really good and you got maybe a couple of things that you've got to tweak and fix, like, for example, with Georgia, I think Kirby's a young head coach that's trying to learn. You got to open up the offense a little bit more. We're going to see if he's figured that out. I kind of think he has, and I think he will. And I think that's everything from recruiting to how they're coaching it, what they're doing it. So I think that's an easier fix. That is a tweaking it. That's a bad battery. You plug it in. You're in good shape. Whereas with Ed, it's so much and with Gus, it's so much up and down, and it's a roller coaster. So to me, I don't like the roller coaster. It's a hit or miss. It's like just you don't know what you're going to get. I know what I'm going to get out of Georgia. And it's, to me, he's either going to take that next step or not. But to me, as long as he's in a position, they're in great shape because they're not only recruiting well, they develop well, they coach well on defense. They've just missed some things on offense. But you know what? We're living, Neil, in the world. I was thinking about this. We're living in the world that if it was the modern day and we could take today's modern day world, Joe Paterno wouldn't have lasted very long at Penn State. Tom Osborne would have been fired at Nebraska. Right. John Wooden would have been fired at UCLA. Bobby Bowden would have never made it to where he won 2 titles. All of these guys, I think we tend to forget, or maybe people just don't know. Football people look at, like, for example, Georgia and say, that's consistently good. That's the second best program in the league. Consistently there. Sure. Now they've got to fix it. What part is if they don't, then they're going to be hearing 1980, and they haven't done it. But I think they're right there, whereas I think, to me, the 2 programs that are got the best future are Georgia and A&M. And I'm not picking one out of each. I'm saying that's the 2 best. Because I think Jimbo's there for the long haul. I think Kirby's there for the long haul. Nick, obviously, hey, he may outlive us all. But, I mean, he's not, and then Ed's up and down all that. I think Dan will probably jump at some point, and I like what he does. But unless they're recruiting top 5, that's going to be a frustration thing for him. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. LSU is going to be really intriguing watch this year, as everybody is. I think this is kind of how I see it. I think LSU is going to be fascinating. I don't think the UCLA game. I mean, there's pressure on Chip, but not to win this game. That would be huge for him if he won it, and it would be a real sign, a bad sign. A maybe the first wheel starting to come off sign if they were to lose that game, because I don't see that happen.
I agree completely. Chris, you and I meant to tell you this in the pre-show. I have a rivals.com workshop Friday morning that I have to attend virtually. So I'm going to be out of pocket on Friday. I don't know whether that means we'll have a show Friday or not.
Yeah, I'll jump on and talk with the people if they want to join us. We'd love to have you there.
And then I'll be back on Tuesday. So for me, everyone have a great week. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. I'm gonna turn the Big Green Egg on Saturday or Sunday and see what happens. Have a little fun. Have a little fun with the Big Green Egg and whatever happens to go on it over the course of the weekend. So hope everybody has a safe weekend. I'll be back with you on Tuesday. Chris will be back with you on Friday. Thanks to everyone for being a part of the show. All the comments in the thread, as Chris mentioned earlier, we certainly appreciate it. So until next time, for Chris, I'm Neil. Take care.